Hello, hello, hello. I am author and entrepreneur, the cerebral palsy vigilante, Zachary Fenell. Today, the day I'm recording this, May 7th, Thursday, May 7th, 2020, I was supposed to take part in a self-publishing roundtable event at the South Euclid Library. The South Euclid Library of the Cuyahoga County Public Library System hosts a monthly self-publishing roundtable. And as what I previously suggested, I was on the schedule for the roundtable in May. These roundtables feature 3 self-published authors who each get 15 minutes to share their story and experiences with self-publishing. After each participant gets their 15 minutes, the event is opened up for a Q&A, and then to end the evening, the people in attendance get to come up, talk to the authors, and purchase books if they're interested. Given our current global pandemic, the self-publishing roundtable is not happening. I have been rescheduled for later in the year, and I will share that information once I have more confidence that rescheduling is really going to happen. In general right now, there's this sense of you don't know day to day what's going to happen, month to month. So to try to forecast months out if in-person events are going to happen again, hard to say. So I figured, why wait? Let's do a preview of the self-publishing roundtable through a video. As I've explained already, the event features 3 authors, each get 15 minutes. Afterwards, there's a Q&A, followed by the opportunity to buy books. I obviously am only one author. I can give you my perspectives and will give you my 15 minutes about sharing my experiences with self-publishing. By the end of my video today, you'll know why I chose self-publishing. And then for those of you out there interested in publishing a book yourself, hopefully you'll be able to start answering the questions of who is going to care about your book, where in your niche does your book fit, and what tools do you need to self-publish. And I'm going to start my 15 minutes now. So first off, if you're interested in publishing a book and you're watching this video, kudos to you. I get the sense a lot of people are interested in publishing a book, but they don't do anything about it. Being here watching this video is you doing something about that. You have an interest in trying to formulate those next steps, or perhaps you're further along and you actually have a manuscript and you're kind of curious to the next step after that. Whatever the case, being here, whether you're interested in publishing a book, or if you just want, if you're simply watching to support me, I greatly appreciate that too. But congratulations, you're on the right track by taking action, and the action just starts with learning more. Now, for me, I'm a nonfiction writer. This book right here is my cerebral palsy memoir, Off Balance. Off Balance covers my journey from feeling embarrassed over having a disability to learning to embrace my disability as a part of who I am. The idea to write the book came while I was in college. I was handing in, due to how I write, I was able to attend the exams, go to the learning center, and use a computer to type up my answers for finals. And so, returning from the learning center with my final to give to the professor, Sister Krita, as I handed her the paper, this is in my senior year, she looked up at me and she goes, "Zach, you are an inspiration to anyone who has to overcome obstacles." This took me by surprise because I've never considered myself an inspiration. I've always just been living the life I was given. Figuring maybe others would also get inspiration on my story, the idea came to me to write a book. Now, Sister Krita knew a little bit about my background. Two reasons. I did some writing for the student, I wrote some articles for the student newspaper where I discussed some of the, my cerebral palsy and some setbacks I experienced, like when at 14 years old I had back surgery. I woke up from my back surgery. My right leg was temporarily paralyzed. Although at the time we weren't sure if it was temporary or not. That stuff is in my book. But anyway, so she knew about that from what I published publicly in the Renee News. In addition to, she was also my theology professor for the basic theology class freshman year, where I wrote reflection papers and included personal stuff of what I've gone through with cerebral palsy. So through those, she knew of my story, and that whole moment of her calling me inspiration made me think about maybe someone else would find inspiration from my story. I'm going to write a book. Interesting, different reaction. And this brings us to I almost got ahead of myself there. Let me take a step back. I decided I was going to write a book. Why I chose to self-publish. I did research to see the route I wanted to go. From my research, I knew that publishing with a traditional publisher would take time. You could be talking years of query letters, signing a contract, and before you could be talking a couple years before your book gets published. I didn't want to wait for that. Plus, I didn't want to sign over creative control. I wanted to be in charge of my book. I'm very much a do-it-yourself person. Even the book cover that I have, I use Photoshop to make that book cover. Maybe I'll get into that more in a little bit. Again, getting ahead of myself. But between the time it would involve to see my book actually in print, between the idea of I might have to give up creative control over things in my book, one last factor was I read even people who traditionally publish still end up, working on marketing the book themselves. So if they're marketing the book themselves, I figured I might as well self-publish, and since I'm going to be marketing the book itself, I'm going to be marketing the book myself, I might as well self-publish. Now we get into the questions of who cares about your book? Why is someone going to care about your book? I said, Sister Krita, she called me an inspiration. She knew me. Tony Zapanzik, who was my academic advisor in college, turned friend. I had him as a professor too. But after I graduated, we still got together, had beers every once in a while, and we catch up. And as I talked about my book, Tony would ask, Zach, who cares? Like, he gave that blunt, direct feedback I needed. Zach, who's going to care? You're not a former president. You're not a celebrity. And Tony's inquiry made me think. He was right. Just some guy. And that's where the focus of my book really came in, where it's not the off balance isn't about me per se as much as Off Balance is a cerebral palsy memoir. The focus is on cerebral palsy. Who's going to care? Other individuals with cerebral palsy who are looking for someone they can relate to, who might feel alone in the world and are turning to a book to find someone who's like, yes, I get this. I get that. I'm experiencing this. I'm not alone. Parents are going to care because the insights I share in my book might help them learn how to better handle parenting their child, or not better handle parenting, but offer insights that might help them adjust their parenting approach. And that's where the focus of cerebral palsy came in versus this is about me. Even if you don't write nonfiction, even if you're not working on a memoir, say you're writing fantasy or a mystery, there are other fantasy writers out there. There are other mystery writers out there. Mystery writers, fantasy writers with more clout than you. And so you have to figure out yourself, well, how, you had to figure out a way to make fantasy readers, make mystery readers, whoever your reader is, you had to figure out a way to make them care, which leads into the next point of the next question of where does your book fit in with the niche of within your niche? So for me, my niche is cerebral palsy, and there's other cerebral palsy books memoirs out there. Mine is different because it focuses slowly, on my teenage years, pretty much early 20s, and it's that journey from embarrassment over being different to embracing the differences as a part of who I am. that wasn't always the case actually with Off Balance. My first manuscript, I received feedback from one of my beta reader slash editor, another professor I had up at Notre Dame. And he told me very nicely, but I read in between lines, he said that the book reads like a medicalized, like history, like medical history. And when I went back to the drawing boards and came up with that emotional journey and to focus on the teenage years. You're not, and I believe the teenage years are very important because they are very influential in the people we become. So rather than having memoirs out there where there's a chapter or two dedicated to the teenage years, now there's an entire book dedicated to the teenage years. So you have to figure out, maybe there's something you feel there's just a little, something missing, there's a void in that fantasy, in mystery, or just figuring out where your book is going to fit into the niche of your reader. And once you get this all figured out, and how do you take it from idea in your brain to physical book? Self-publishing can be very intimidating, not knowing who else to, not knowing, okay, where do I start? How do I do this? I was very surprised. I self-published Off Balance in ebook form in December of 2011, and it wasn't until February of 2020 that I got the paperback copy ready, because I wasn't sure, how do I do this? How do I do that? I thought, I'm going to need InDesign. I'm going to need a fancy software program to lay out my books. That's not true. I learned from Abby Vandiver, who is almost like a mentor to me, that all you need is Word. You need a Word. You can format your book using Word. And Kindle Direct Publishing is great. That's who I published the paperback copies with. As I said, I used Photoshop to create the cover, and I'm coming down to my last 30 seconds. So just one more time, Word, Photoshop for the cover, and Kindle Direct Publishing. They have a huge, Kindle YouTube instructions. Again, this is to the point where if you have a question on what exactly you need, to go ahead, leave your questions in the comments. I will answer them in a timely fashion. If you've enjoyed this video, please go ahead, hit the thumbs up, show you like the video. If you're interested in purchasing Off Balance, I'm going to leave the link to buy the book in the video's description. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, remember, don't blend in, blend out.